Native American culture has fascinating traditions, powerful beliefs, and deep connections to the spiritual world. But not everything about their way of life was comforting. Some things that were completely normal to them would send chills down anyone's spine today. For Native Americans, the line between the natural and supernatural was thin, almost non-existent. They believed spirits, creatures, and forces beyond comprehension were all around them. These creepy elements were woven into their lives, whether as warnings, protectors, or punishments. In today's video, we'll explore some creepy things that were just normal with Native Americans. Let's get started. The Skinwalkers. Let's start with one of the most creepy legends of all, Skinwalkers. For the Navajo people, the idea of a skinwalker wasn't just a spooky campfire story, but a terrifying reality. These beings were considered witches who had gained the power to transform into animals like wolves, coyotes, or even birds. But this wasn't for fun. They used this ability to harm or manipulate others. The legend says that skinwalkers weren't born this way. They became skinwalkers by committing unspeakable acts like killing a close family member. Afterward, they gained the ability to shift forms and even mimic human voices to lure their victims. Imagine hearing a loved one's voice calling for help in the dead of night, only to realize it was a skinwalker leading you into a trap. What made skinwalkers even scarier was their speed and intelligence. Stories claim they could outrun any human and were nearly impossible to kill. The only way to stop one? You had to figure out their true identity and say their real name aloud. Skinwalkers were an ever-present fear. People avoided openly discussing them, believing that doing so might attract their attention. Creepy? Absolutely. But for the Navajo, this was just another part of life. The Wendigo cannibal. If you thought skinwalkers were terrifying, wait until you hear about the Wendigo. This strange figure comes from the Algonquin-speaking tribes and is the stuff of nightmares. The Wendigo wasn't only a monster, but a cautionary tale against greed, selfishness, and desperation. According to legend, a Wendigo was born when a person resorted to cannibalism, often during brutal winters when food was scarce. Once someone tasted human flesh, they transformed into this ghastly creature, tall, emaciated, and covered in icy skin. Its glowing eyes and sharp claws only added to its horrifying appearance. But what made the Wendigo truly terrifying was its insatiable hunger. No matter how much it ate, it could never be satisfied. It constantly roamed the forests, searching for its next victim. To the Algonquin people, the Wendigo wasn't just a scary story, but a warning. It reminded everyone of the dangers of losing humanity in times of hardship. Some versions of the legend say that the Wendigo could possess people, driving them to madness or even forcing them to harm others. Signs of possession included uncontrollable greed and an unquenchable desire for flesh. Imagine living in a small, isolated village and wondering if your neighbor or even your family member might be turning into one of these creatures. To this day, stories of the Wendigo continue to haunt people, with sightings still being reported in remote areas of North America. The Wendigo was a grim reminder of what could happen when desperation took over. Creepy, definitely. But to them, it was just another part of life's harsh realities. The Stick Indians. Imagine walking alone in the woods, surrounded by towering trees and strange silence. Suddenly, you hear faint whispers, soft enough to question if they're real. That's the unsettling world of the Stick Indians, mysterious beings from the lore of Salish tribes. Unlike other loud and in-your-face legends, These spirits are quiet and cunning, using the stillness of the forest to their advantage. Stick Indians weren't the kind of creatures you could fight or escape easily. According to stories, they didn't attack outright. Instead, they played with your mind, luring you deeper into the woods until you were hopelessly lost. People claimed they drew you in with strange whistles, whispers, or childlike laughter. Some said they could paralyze you with a glance or make you entirely forget who you were. The most chilling part? Stick Indians weren't seen as purely evil. They were considered guardians of the forest, punishing those who disrespected nature. They'd ensure you paid the price if you wandered into their territory or took more than you needed. Some stories even claim that those who disappeared in the woods were taken by the Stick Indians, never to return. What made these beings even scarier was how they blended into everyday life. People believed certain forest areas were Stick Indian territory and avoided them at all costs. Others left offerings, like small bits of food, to keep the spirits happy. For the Salish tribes, the Stick Indians weren't just a scary bedtime story. They were a reminder to respect nature and tread carefully in the wilderness. Today, their legend still sends shivers down spines, making even the bravest hikers think twice before stepping off the beaten path. The Thunderbirds' Wrath. When Native Americans looked to the skies and saw storm clouds brewing, they didn't just think of rain, they thought of the Thunderbird. This massive, mythical creature wasn't your normal bird, but a force of nature, powerful enough to summon thunderstorms with a single flap of its wings. But the Thunderbird wasn't always a friendly protector. Its wrath was something to be feared. Legends say that the Thunderbird lived high in the mountains, hidden from human eyes. It controlled lightning, thunder, and rain, using these elements to protect the land or punish those who crossed it. When tribes heard thunder, they believed the Thunderbird's wings were beating against the sky. Lightning. That was its eyes flashing in anger. But what made the Thunderbird truly creepy was its unpredictable nature. Protecting people from evil spirits or dangerous creatures could also bring destruction. Stories tell of entire villages wiped out by storms after angering the Thunderbird. The consequences were brutal, whether failing to honor it or disturbing its territory. Some tribes even believed the Thunderbird could take human form and walk among them. If it appeared in your dreams, it was either a warning or a sign of great responsibility. But here's the catch. It wasn't always clear which. Imagine waking up from such a dream, not knowing if you'd been blessed or cursed. To this day, the idea of a creature controlling the weather inspires both fascination and dread, burial rites and the spirit world. For Native Americans, death wasn't the end, it was a passage into the spirit world. But this transition wasn't simple, and ensuring the deceased crossed over peacefully required specific burial rites. To outsiders, these practices might seem off. Still, for Native tribes, they were essential to keeping the balance between the living and the dead. One of the most unsettling aspects of these rites was the fear of angry or vengeful spirits. If a burial wasn't done correctly, it was believed that the spirit of the deceased could linger, causing harm to the living. To prevent this, tribes placed protective items like weapons, food, or personal belongings in the grave. These offerings were meant to help the spirit on its journey and keep it from returning. Some tribes took things further by holding elaborate ceremonies to honor the dead. The Plains tribes, for instance, practiced sky burials, where bodies were placed on elevated platforms to decompose naturally. This wasn't seen as gruesome, but as a way to return the body to the earth and the spirit to the skies. However, leaving a loved one exposed to the elements might send shivers down modern spines. The burial sites themselves often carried an air of mystery. Many were located in remote, sacred areas to prevent disturbances. People believed these places were gateways to the spirit world, and disturbing them could bring terrible consequences. Even today, some burial grounds are considered haunted, with reports of strange noises, shadowy figures, and an overwhelming sense of unease. These rites weren't just traditions, but a vital part of life and death. Ensuring the spirit moved on peacefully was as normal as breathing. However, the eerie rituals and ghostly beliefs surrounding these practices remain awkward to outsiders. Legend of the Deer Woman. One of the creepiest legends in Native American culture is that of the Deer Woman. This creature blends beauty with menace. To the unknowing eye, she might appear as a stunning young woman, often seen wandering alone in the wilderness or at the edges of gatherings. But there's one giveaway: her feet. Beneath her alluring appearance, she hides the hooves of a deer. The Deer Woman's origins vary among tribes, but her purpose is universally unsettling. She was said to lure men away from their communities, using her beauty to captivate and deceive. Once they followed her into the woods, they were never seen again. Some legends say she trampled her victims to death. In contrast, others suggest she led them into dangerous situations they couldn't escape. But the Deer Woman was not a random predator. Many believe she targeted those who disrespected women or family values, serving as a dark moral lesson. Men who abused their partners or strayed from their responsibilities were said to be her prime targets. It's as if she was both a punisher and a guardian, depending on how you looked at her actions. The Deer Woman was feared and respected by those who believed in her. Some would leave offerings in the forest to appease her spirit, while others avoided walking alone at night. Even today, stories of the Deer Woman linger, with some claiming to have spotted her on moonlit trails or in the shadows of dance halls. The Flying Head. The Flying Head is one of the most terrifying legends in the traditions of the Iroquois and Wyandot peoples. This monstrous entity is said to have been born out of acts of extreme violence or desperation. Some stories suggest it emerged from cannibals who met a gruesome end, while others claim it is the result of brutal battles where the defeated literally lost their heads. Regardless of its origin, the Flying Head is a haunting presence that stalks the night. Imagine a massive, disembodied head with wild, matted hair stretching down like a shroud. Its features are grotesque and exaggerated, and its glowing eyes are filled with a malevolent hunger that can never be satisfied. Some accounts describe it with leathery bat-like wings, adding an otherworldly terror to its form. This creature is not bound by the limitations of a mortal body. It floats or flies, driven solely by its insatiable appetite for living flesh. The Flying Head is said to haunt the forests, its presence announced by a deep, unearthly growl or the eerie rustling of leaves, even when there is no wind. It's always hunting, always seeking, and no one is truly safe when it's near. According to the stories, no weapon forged by human hands can harm it. Arrows shatter, blades glance off harmlessly, and fire doesn't seem to faze this unholy being. But there is a way to defeat it, though it requires cunning and courage. The legend says the Flying Head can be tricked into consuming red-hot coals disguised as food. Unable to resist its relentless hunger, it swallows the burning embers, ultimately destroying itself from within. However, outsmarting such a relentless predator is no small task. Few have lived to tell the tale. This legend isn't just a story of terror. It carries a deeper meaning, warning against greed, violence, and the darker impulses of human nature. It also serves as a chilling reminder of the mysteries and dangers that lurk in the unknown. The cursed land of Chindi. The Navajo have a word that sends chills through anyone who understands its meaning: Chindi. It refers to the ghost or spirit left behind by a person after death, and it isn't something to take lightly. While most spirits were believed to move on peacefully, a Chindi resulted from unresolved anger, resentment, or unfinished business. According to Navajo belief, when someone dies, their spirit is divided. The positive part moves on to the afterlife. Still, the negative emotions, from rage to bitterness, manifest as a Chindi. These spirits were thought to haunt places or people associated with their unfinished business, spreading illness, misfortune, or even death. What made Chindi particularly terrifying was their ability to cling to specific objects or locations. For example, a home where someone died might be abandoned entirely to avoid the lingering spirit. Families would often destroy the deceased's possessions or perform elaborate purification rituals to prevent a Chindi from forming. Some stories describe travelers stumbling upon cursed lands, unaware they were entering a Chindi's domain. These areas were often marked by an eerie silence, dead vegetation, or a feeling of overwhelming dread. Once someone set foot on this land, they risked being cursed by the spirit's wrath. Even more unsettling was the belief that Chindi could attach themselves to people who disrespected the dead. This made funerals and mourning practices incredibly important, as any mistake could invite a Chindi into your life. Owls. The Yakima people tell a chilling story passed down for generations. It's a tale of 5 sisters who lived in a cave, but these weren't ordinary women. Their habits were strange and, quite frankly, terrifying. They feasted on things that no one else dared to eat: frogs, lizards, snakes, and even mice. These creatures were off limits to other First Nations people, but to the sisters, they were just another meal. But it didn't stop there. The stories say that if these sisters dislike someone, they might even target them as prey. Yes, prey. So, what were these sisters? Were they witches? Were they something else entirely? Whatever they were deeply feared. Their presence brought a wild energy, almost like the air itself grew heavier around them. Some say they were cursed. Others believe they were in touch with dark forces. One thing's for sure, they didn't belong among the living. But as all stories go, even the most terrifying beings must meet their end. One by one, these sisters died. Was it fate? Was it retribution? No one knows for sure. But the final sister's death is where this story takes an even darker turn. She drowned. That should have been the end, right? A watery grave and silence forevermore. But no. From one of her eyes, owls were created. Yes, owls, the creatures we often associate with wisdom and mystery. But according to this legend, they are far more than that. Every owl you see carries a piece of her soul. Watching, waiting, observing. Those piercing eyes, they're not just looking at you, they're remembering. Her spirit lingers in the quiet of the night, in the shadows of the trees, and in the haunting call of the owl. So, the next time you hear the soft hoot of an owl in the darkness, think of her. A small part of that final sister still roams the world, keeping watch over us all, not out of kindness, but as a reminder of her dark legacy. The phantom warriors of the plains. In the vast, open plains where native tribes like the Sioux and Cheyenne lived, tales of phantom warriors were passed down for generations. These weren't just ghostly figures. They were the spirits of fallen warriors, doomed to roam the earth in search of peace. Phantom warriors were often seen at night, riding their spectral horses across the plains or appearing near old battlefields. Witnesses described them as shadowy figures, sometimes with glowing eyes and always surrounded by an unsettling silence. Even their horses were said to be ghostly, with glowing hooves that left no tracks. These spirits were believed to be the restless souls of those who had died in battle but hadn't been properly honored or buried. Without the sacred rites, they could not find peace in the afterlife. This belief made burial ceremonies incredibly important for tribes, as they feared the consequences of leaving a warrior's spirit unfulfilled. But the phantom warriors weren't always seen as threats. Some stories claimed they appeared as warnings, protecting their tribes by alerting them to danger. Others believed they were guardians of sacred lands, ensuring that these areas remained untouched and respected. Still, encountering a phantom warrior was anything but comforting. Those who crossed paths with them reported overwhelming dread, as if they were being watched by something far beyond human understanding. Some even claimed seeing a phantom warrior was a sign of impending death. To the Plains tribes, these spirits were both a reminder of the cost of war and a call to honor their ancestors, Skudakamuch. Skudakamuch, or ghost witches, are the stuff of nightmares in Native American folklore. These aren't your average ghost stories. They're far darker. Imagine a shaman who, during their lifetime, dabbled in forbidden dark magic. When they die, that should be the end of their terrifying chapter, right? Wrong. Instead of finding peace, their corpse becomes a gateway for a demon. Every night, this malevolent force possesses the shaman's lifeless body, animating it to wreak havoc on the living. Here's where it gets chilling. If you hear its voice, see its form, or worst of all, meet its gaze, you're already cursed. The curse isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's devastating, and there's no easy escape. These ghost witches look as horrifying as they sound. Decayed, rotting corpses, yet horrifyingly mobile. They're not just a terror to behold, they're nearly impossible to stop. The only surefire way to end their unholy existence? Fire. Only by setting them alight can the demonic hold on their body be destroyed, offering some finality to their terror. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, we have the Nalosa, a shadowy nightmare from Choctaw lore. The name translates to long black being. If you've ever heard tales of shadow people, this might feel uncomfortably familiar. Picture a tall, faceless humanoid figure lurking just out of reach, blending into the darkness like it belongs there. That's Nalosa in its usual form. But here's the twist. When startled, it can slither along the ground like a snake or melt into the shadows entirely, making it nearly impossible to track. These beings are notorious for lurking behind trees in the forest or in the dim, forgotten corners of a home. While they seem to thrive on fear, they don't always harm their victims. If you're particularly unlucky, they might do more than just scare you. Hexes aren't unheard of, leaving those encountering them with far more than a story to tell. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in our next video.